Okay, good afternoon, good evening. I have decided to do this live reaction to the news that is reported in various media in Jamaica. That is the passing of or the death of Tyra Spaulding, a former Miss Universe contestant. And this was brought to my attention. One, because of the type of advocacy that I engage in, and two, also because of my charitable work and the areas of interest as it relates to all things Jamaica, of course, and mental health issues, or as this podcast titled life factors, any life factors that are out there. Generally, I would have someone that I would engage in a discussion with on these life factor issues. However, it is a sensitive topic, and so I'm going to go with this one solo just so that, I'm not putting people on a spot to discuss these very, very difficult um, issues. This is not easy. So I prepared a slides, but of course, because I'm so new to this live thing, I I may not be able to share it with you. So I'm just gonna, you have to trust what I'm telling you without a visual at this time. So as I said, it was brought to my attention actually this morning. However, the passing of Tyra Spaulding occurred, from what I gathered again from the news media, that is TV, um, television, newsprint, and all various social media platform. From what I gathered, however, most of this information was passed on to me by my group of network people who pay attention to this topic. So there were three videos that I came across that was shared on a platform. I believe it was Instagram that someone passed it on, send me the link and pass it on. So again, this is not. I have not. I have not met Tyra Spalding. I've never heard of her. This is actually the first time I've heard the name. And I'm saying this to say that I have no personal connection to her or any relatives or anything. What I'm interested in is, based on what was reported, the theme of mental health issues that came out of what was reported based on 3 videos that were again sent to me. And what I did, because I'm not that sophisticated as others to, embed videos, I just, do a transcript of what was said. And of course, I'm going to do some paraphrasing just so to protect others who may be watching where certain words may be sensitive or triggering. And so I'm going to proceed in reading um, mostly verbatim. And I will tell you when it's not what the 3 videos that I came across stated. But I also want to let you know how I'm reacting to this. I'm reacting to this in the context of mental health. That's a context. And also, I will do an interpretive analysis, meaning based on the 3 videos and the words that were expressed by Tara in her own words, hoping that these videos are legitimate because they're coming from source, and I will tell you the source, and it's not AI or created or anything. So I hope not. I'm relying on whatever was published, and we know there's all sorts of crazy stuff out there that people, what may seem to be true is not. So hopefully, I'm not falling for one of those. But here is the first video in Tyra words, and this came from, I saw the link. It says the source was from Jamaica YouTube TV, and you can look up that source. And the word says, "I'm fighting for my life over here. I feel like I need to go out and do something because my mind is trying to, and here I'm paraphrasing, do something for me, or telling me to do something, and her words for me. And if I do nothing, something may happen to me, guys. Every day I get up, my mind tells me to go out and do something, that may suggest that will, proceed to her not being among us anymore if she follows her mind. She said, it tells me to go and, do, outline specific things that she said her mind is telling her to do. Now, of course, I will invite you to watch the video. I'm not going to fill in those blanks for you here, only because these are a very sensitive topic, and we want to make sure that what is said, you can go and look at the original for yourself and interpret it for what it meant. It tells me to go do something to myself. And she continues to say, I'm fighting for my life. Where do the thoughts come from? I don't know. I have no idea. There are my own thoughts, she said, but I do not want to be having them. No, she says, I do not want to, pass on. Paraphrasing there, I mean it. I mean, it could be easier, than having to deal with the ups and downs of life. But boy, I don't know. But all I know is I know I'm fighting for my life. And she said, and right now I'm just trying to do anything I can that will either distract me. I don't know. Give me temporary motivation. That's what she said. No, forgive me if throughout the paraphrase you may not get the exact words, but again, I will invite you to search the social media platforms and television and print to get the exact words if they do print them. So that's one video one in her own words. That's one that I saw. And of course, I'm going to read them and then come back with the just an interpretive analysis within the mental health context. And then, words number 2, source. This is from Social Issue Jamaica that was posted through, I think, Instagram. And she said, so I have to come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist here on earth in the way we think he exists. I think this world is way too evil, way too wicked. Honesty has no place here. Truth has no place here. Morals have no place here. I think that is truly, truly evil and evil only. And that is the, some of the words that were said in that video. And again, if there's any editing or AI interjection or deleting of any of those, it is not my intention to say it in any other way except the way that it was produced from the source, which is Social Issue Jamaica. So that's Tyra words, in our own words, number 2. Now, in number 3 video that was posted, that I was sent to me on Instagram, is this sources from Vice Promotion Jamaica, and the video appeared to say, and it appears to be the image of her saying, like, you see me posting these videos now, I don't even know if people will watch this stuff. And it said, who even cares? Who cares about this stuff? This is just my life, but who am I, And who knows, maybe maybe what's going to happen to me is, no, let me not think like that. I was going to say, perhaps after I'm gone and let my, passing, and paraphrasing there, start announcing everywhere people, stumble upon, or they will start to research when, and there's a word there that was not clear, so I'm not sure what it means. And probably, and it kind of say, and probably they'll find these videos and they will be like, oh my God. Now, I am not sure of the order of these videos, meaning which one, if it's, if the way that I read it in terms of video 1, video 2, video 3, in terms of what may have said or what appears to be said, what order they appeared in its original form on her platform. As I said, I've not accessed her platform or follow of any sort. And the source did not, everything that is being sent out now is more on the day of. If it was posted yesterday, then it shows on those sources website, and if I see today, that's what I'm seeing. So there's no particular chronological order for this. So here's the very tragic, very, very tragic indeed, why this matters so much. We want to make sure we capture anyone and everyone, or anyone that, whether social class, gender, that may experience, forms of mental health issues, whatever the category it is falling. And it is not for us to say, well, because this person reached the level of, visibility, then where, Miss Universe is visible across the globe. Miss Jamaica Universe, it's something that's broadcast. We're going to look at the physical characteristics of this person. Some of us will say that, as an individual in Jamaica, very intellectual in terms of the way she speaks. Based on society's views of beauty, she's very beautiful, especially with the confidence to enter such an extreme competition that places a lot of emphasis on beauty and grace and poise and etiquette and intellect. And so it may not seem fair that because of her, then the mourning is going to reach at such an international level, because we hear of a farmer that may have take their own life. We have heard of a husband or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or someone in the most remote part of Jamaica that may have engaged in something like that. And so it doesn't reach or hit the way that maybe this one, as it relates to Tyra Spaulding, hit. Why? Because of her social class or status in Jamaica. We can use it as a positive approach to having more conversations about mental health, support system, building supportive network, and the way that we treat each other. Remember now, this is just an interpretive analysis. Somebody could say, well, there's so many family members around her, there's so many friends around her, and they did this and they did that. We are not getting all that information. If we're going to rely and say those three videos that I, kind of read some of her words or provide a script of what was said, it appears as if she's alone. It appears as if she's alone in her own words. Um, Especially the one when she said, I've come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist here on earth in the way that we think he exists. She said, I think this world is way too evil, way too wicked. Honesty has no place. Now, for someone to share this using their you know their phone or whatever streaming device to record and upload and so on, um, whereas if they have a network of people that they talk to on a daily basis, this could have been a conversation. A person who may even see the video could have a conversation and say, hey Tara, what's up? I noticed your video, and then what are you talking about? What's going on, girl? Things like that. But again, it's just an interpretation. Where are the network of people around her friends, family members, um, just the community that she was a part of, the organization, which is a Miss Universe or Jamaica Universe, Miss Universe Jamaica. I want to make sure. Where were they? And there was something that's still not clear in terms of where she was. Was she in Jamaica? Was she somewhere here else? Internationally, she was based somewhere else. So I'm gonna jump into something that stood out when she said um, she's fighting for her life because my mind is trying to do something to me. When you're talking to people, for example, in the mental health arena, and you're working with people who use words like that, and you have to do an analysis of what is happening to them based on the self-reporting that they're doing, what kicks in immediately is suggests that the person is saying my mind is, and your mind are your thoughts. That's where it is. The mind, and we know, we will theorize and say the mind doesn't necessarily have a physical space, a place per se. It's really our brain that, this abstractness of our mind exists, right? So we will conceptualize that as someone hearing voices. We would conceptualize it in even a more um, you know specific term, as saying having a mental health term, and to say the person is having auditory hallucination. Well, we don't know. However, there were statements here that says, I feel like I feel like I need to go out and do something because my mind is trying to tell me what I should do to myself, basically. And then the other part is says, If I don't do something about it, if I do nothing, then not going to be here. Meaning, she's going to pass on by, through her own means. Every day I get up, my mind tells me to go out and do something. And there's a specific um, mechanism that the mind is telling her what to do. So that falls within the context of her mind hearing voices, and the voices are telling her to do something. If based on those three video inner words that we came across. So, what is in Jamaica locally? We say, me hear voices, me head that tell me, but it doesn't always translate to a mental health illness. Your grandparents, you may grow up hearing your parents say, one voice said to me, say, or and then you can find out maybe it's within a dream. Rarely, if ever, when it is talked in that context that we interpret it as this person is out of their mind mentally, because we know that Jamaica folklore, a lot of it is based on dream, and there's always dream analysis and everything. My mind tell me so to do this. Me hear one voice say. This is completely different. This is different, and we know as Jamaicans, in terms of our own cultural understanding, that this is different. This is not my mind that tell me say versus my mind is telling me to do something terrible to myself. So we know that there's so much more context in those two areas that are different, right? So I use a term, hearing voices is used, it can be used to explain, and it's used by the layman, by anyone. I'm here, hearing voices as it relates to, in this specific case, as it relates to mental illness. And that means auditory hallucinations. And what that means is the perception that you're hearing sounds, and the sounds could be someone talking, it could be animal sounds, it could be a wind, anything, any sounds, auditory, you're hearing it, but it's not real. Okay? It's not real. This sound, you are conscious of it. So the consciousness of it, right, is where it can create this or distorted reality. The distorted reality in the sense of, is my mind playing tricks on me? Am I hearing what I'm hearing? At the onset, like the beginning stage of it, it could be mild, where the consciousness is there, but the disconnection, the, the disconnection from reality is not completely there, meaning this person is going to operate in any setting normally, right? And they, in some ways, they try to control it. If upon observation they are reacting to the auditory as a stimuli, meaning they hear something and they quickly look around, and they hear something and they look around, or that sound forces them to have a conversation, or have to give a response, it can be observed, because then it becomes where it can go now from mild to moderate to severe, where this person cannot hide it, they cannot control it, right? All sorts of other mental health issues now can emerge from that. And we're going to, it becomes symptomatic to the point where it's not just one thing that you're dealing with now. You're hearing voices. The hallucination is the voices, I'm hearing it, but it's not there. That takes you out from the reality. Okay? But in most cases, because at the very beginning and the onset of it, you're conscious. It's a conscious experience. So it's happening to you. controlling it is where the problem is. Auditory hallucination may be accompanied by what we call visual hallucination. So it doesn't mean the two go hand in hand. What a person may experience just the auditory hallucination, and another person may experience just visual hallucination, or it could be embodied within both visual and audio within one person. So if someone is assessing that, they can ask questions, and you can give examples to the person so that they help them to say, to conclude that yes, this is happening to me. And then you also ask them for their own examples to make sure that they can articulate it themselves or do that self-report. There's all sorts of testing, mini mental health exams that can be used to assess these type of mental health issues. So it's not really just sitting and talking to the person. If a person is a psychologist, for example, there's testing is one of the major way to measure a person's reality. And so there's so many multiple levels type of measurements that can be used to assess any form of mind disorder, thought disorders, or in this context. Now, I'm saying using the word thought disorders. Again, I have to be careful here because there's no indication that a thought disorder itself is attached to the auditory hallucination. Sometimes they can be distinct, but of course it can also be a secondary part of it. Again, you'll find that there's no clear-cut pathway to any of this as it relates to hallucination. There's always something that may attach or detach from that. All right. Another part of that is sensory perceptions. Again, so when I describe that, if the person is hearing voices and their sensories is really what's heightened around it. In this case, the sensory is the auditory, right? They're hearing. If it was the visual hallucination, then they would be seeing it, right? But with the auditory too, if they're hearing it, sometimes the problem becomes so severe that they started even feeling. So if for example, if they say a person is trying to do, they hear somebody and the person threatening them that they're going to do something to them, and they said the person is touching them, that also is part of the sensory. So if all of those five senses are activated within this hallucination, then it's even more problematic. So the five senses, you're talking about seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smell. There's all of that that may occur in the if someone experiences all those two areas of hallucination and more and more. All right. So when I mention about thoughts, that the thoughts disorder may or may not be part of it. Say in the case of automatic thoughts, or what we call intrusive thoughts, then if you go back to her words, she's saying, every day I get up, my mind tell me. We know what goes on in the mind, thoughts, right? We know that goes on, what our mind work, the thoughts. So hearing a voice saying to do something, the voice could be, the starting point could be a thought, could be, right? And so it could intrude on this person's mind so much that it just becomes so overwhelmed and just, fester into intrusive thoughts, where I don't want to think about that. I don't want to hear this. Get out of my head, that kind of thing. But they have no control over it. There's treatment that we're going to talk about as to how to be able to reduce, minimize, because there's really, so far, there's no clear cut cure for when you start hearing voices. But it can be treated. There's ways to treat it. I'm going to share that. So auditory hallucinations impair the ability to recognize that the voice is self-generated. So again, it could be the person's own thoughts that is intruded. It's self-generated. It's internal. It is not external. But the reaction may appear to be, because if it accompanies the visual hallucination, or even just the natural reaction to the voice, to the auditory, and you just look, and I hear something and you look, and this is not somebody at the door or something, it's just whatever, and the voice could have a name, it could have a smell, as I said, if it activate those sensories, all the sensories, and so on. There's so many things that can be attached to that. Again, the hallucination of it can be broad. It can be so broad if you actually look into it. So it is not an external sound. It's internal. It's internal. So, because think about this, if it was external and you can prove that the sound is coming from somewhere, then that's not a distorted thought, or that is not any hallucination. It's real. But if it's not there, but in this case, when she said, the voice is saying to hurt herself in that kind of way, um it's not where, like, we want to know, like, where does this happen? Because sometimes you will find that some people may say, this only happened when I'm at home, which can indicate something like a traumatizing environment, something happened in the environment, so it traumatizes them. This could happen in specific environment. It could occur as a trigger of something happening that particularly triggers that, and then that. But does it, if it triggers, does it mean that it's a one-time thing and then it goes away? No, then it would not be considered to be um, a mental illness per se. It could be just that one thing. So you can still categorize it as auditory hallucinations, but it doesn't mean that it can be a full, a fully um, concluded diagnosis, because um, it is not the frequency, the range of it, the intensity of it, when it's measured, again, through self-reporting from the person who is experiencing it. um, they may say, they can, conclude, help you make that conclusion based on that, and then of course further assessment from an expert to help the person understand what is happening. So there's a lot of data that must be collected from this individual to get a better understanding of all the frequency range and intensity of, and the onset, of course. And then you want to assess for trauma, childhood situations, um, triggers, and it could be relationships, relationship dynamics, perceptions of self. There's so much to be unpacked to understand how this occurred, because auditory hallucination is not a diagnosis by itself. It is part of a symptoms of all sorts of different diagnoses, all sorts. So it's not where, there's the medical or mental health diagnostic manual would suggest that that's what it is. It's part of. So it is an area or an outcome from other mental health issues that may be there. And it does not always mean that it's chronic. It's a chronic mental illness. Again, as I said, it could be a one-time episode. It could be even an episode that you believe occurred, but when assessed, it's really does not meet that requirement. But if we go back to her words, um, when someone say, "I am fighting for my life," it's an indication or suggestion that this is an ongoing thing. This is not a one-time thing. It's ongoing. And for anybody who probably follow her or watch other videos, we have three so far that was shared with me. Then it suggests that there's something more deeper and wider than, say, a one-time thing. Um, the hallucinations or hearing voices or my voice is telling me to do something can also be upon a stress reaction, right? It's reactionary to a stress. Um, and the stress doesn't mean like we're not talking about like childhood stress or relationship stress per se, which could be ongoing. We're talking like in the immediate setting, and you just collapse under pressure, and whatever it is your mind is telling you to do, or your thought a voice is telling you to do. I could give you so many different scenarios that could produce an outcome from this, in terms of what could be happening. Of course, it's not fair because she predicted it. She said, like you see me posting these videos now, I don't know if people will watch this stuff. And then she said, if people may stumble upon it after the fact, after she passed on, after the voices controlled her to the point where she cannot control it anymore, and she, as a result, just suffer the consequences of those voices. So it is an indication that this is something that has been happening to her, and it's so unfair. And it is so unfair because, again, she was being so open, it appears, um, to sharing this, and the resources that could have been used um, to save her, right? And when she said, I'm trying to do anything that I can that will either distract me. Now that's so clearly she is self-empowering there. She's trying to empower herself to fight against this, because I mean, you have to see some of this thing in action. You have to be able to be around people who suffer from this type of it's debilitating. It's a very just unstable sense of self, and it doesn't just affect the person, it affects people around them, because again, your support system, when they care for you and love you so much, they see that you're suffering. But she said, I don't know, in other words, anything to distract me, so I can, she said, to give me the temporary motivation to, and it treads off there. So I'm thinking temporary motivation to live, motivation to go on, motivation to keep trying things. So the word distraction there is a key piece, because remember I said that there's no one cure it all for any of this, none. If you can, it would be something where it reduces whatever the treatment approach can reduce it. You teach the skills and the strategies to learn how to manage the voices, reframing thoughts through what we call cognitive behavioral approaches. We do, engage in more exercise and so on. I'm going to talk more about that. I mean, I could go on and on about this. Um, It is an experience that already exists. It's already existing within a psychiatric condition. Um, so it could be someone who has a schizophrenia. Now, I want to put context on this. This can happen to anyone, okay? It can happen to children even as young as 5 years old. It can happen to the adolescent stage, and I'm giving it in that kind of life stage group then, so you can see, understand that, how it may happen. And it can happen to the young adults, emerging from 18 to say the 20 to 23, and then of course the adults after that. um, what does it look like within children? That's the trick part. It's very difficult to assess in children because we know children do make believe stuff. They talk to their imaginary friends, right? And parents who, we know in the Caribbean, it's because that is not something that we get alarmed about, but in other countries, whether European type countries, this is something that they'll be alarmed and want to talk to their pediatrician or to their you know psychologist and say, my child is talking. And of course, the psychologist is going to say, well, it's age appropriate, and just observe and tell us what is happening or something of the sort. And some parents, that will be enough to satisfy them. But if it become where there's images that comes with it, like if the psychologist assesses it's 5 year old or 6 years old and say, you know can you even write down or draw what you believe this voice is telling you, and it shows something that is something that appears to be distorted or dangerous to self, to the child themselves, and to others, then clearly that could be categorized. But it would not be a sole diagnosis. Remember, it has to be something they will diagnose with, something like bipolar or mood disorder, whatever cognitive issues it used to be with the mind that may come about. And of course, they will still assess for trauma too, because children can experience childhood trauma even as young as that age, of course. Then there's post-traumatic stress disorder that we know. Anyone, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be psychological. If I should do a cultural context on that, I remember somebody said almost everybody in Jamaica may have some type of post-traumatic stress based on the type of parenting style that some of us may grow up with, the religious approach to parenting, or the authoritarian type of approach to parenting, the just being in certain school setting or in certain community settings, what you've exposed to. We could say that it's not fair, but we could say that, and it's looked at in a different context. But when you are, here's an interesting thing: when your mind is open in a more global context, and you realize, wait a minute, my childhood should not have been this way at all, then that's when you start do a comparison. And you would think that the more you know about, say, how maybe how other people socialize their children or how other cultures socialize their children, it will give you, um, be allow you to be more informed or more empowered. But some people may become traumatized as a result of that new information that they're getting, because now they're realizing, wait a minute, they're trying to conceptualize or put a word on it, scientific term on it. Oh, are you saying that I've been traumatized all my life and I didn't know this? Are you saying this has been happening to me and I didn't realize this? It's the same thing, like, I remember it, it was part of a forum, open forum, and somebody asked a question about, you know, I'm going to use the word forced intimacy in Jamaica, for example. I don't want to use the other word because I don't want to scare anyone. And somebody say, the percentage rate is so high, where some young girls, or probably in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in those eras, that it was seem appears to be common for and this is gendered now, where a man would force a woman to do something. And there's some, people say that's what's part of the culture, only to realize that, wait a minute, that was just so wrong. That is sexual assault. That is, something that is criminal, right? It's the same thing with mental health. I know I'm going on and on. It's the same thing with mental health. We don't realize that some of the experiences that we have in our culture um, contribute to our um, instability, unstableness, and as are the consequences of that. And there it is. And then the major depression. So here I'm laying out where and how auditory hallucination may show up, hearing voices may show up. It's not a diagnosis on its own. It can fall within schizophrenia, bipolar, any of the mood disorder, any of them, post-traumatic stress disorder, even postpartum. Postpartum can be um, people that, after having children, can experience hallucinations in various forms, whether visual, um, auditory, or through other sensory. And then major depression, prolonged sadness, helplessness, hopelessness, and this feeling not having joy, or what they call anhedonia. Someone may pronounce it different, where they just can't find pleasure in anything. And that as a result of feeling depressed. But of course, you can say depression, for it to be considered major depression, then it has to be, um, you know, over an extended period of time. So, who more likely to end up with having symptoms? Um, even if it is not clearly diagnosed. Again, you don't have to be diagnosed to have it. It just happened to have it, because we know in Jamaica, mental health checkup is not a norm. Medical checkup is not something that people do. Um, More so, um, or should I say, much less, mental health checkup. So again, I mentioned children, adolescent, adults. So it's across the board. Seniors, of course, we know, but with seniors, it's a little different in a sense that aging is a related factor. We know that the older you get, certain your cognition decline, and so the onset of that is there's a higher chance and possibility. So even if you rule out, say, genetic factors, environmental factors, um, at that stage of their life, it may occur as a result of age, um, and then possibly difficult to assess what could have contributed to it, because now the person may have reached a point where they cannot provide any information about their child, unless there's family members there that going to give you those secondary reports. It is said that hallucination, hearing voices, is more common in women. But of course, men often hear voices as it relates to, doing things, which is interesting. It's almost as if the symptom is of its stereotype in its own self. You find that the voice is telling men to do things that consider to be manly, with a weapon, with a car, things like that. Tell them to do those things, or do something to suggest or display their manly behavior. And for women, now it's the opposite in terms of the stereotype, where they would hear insults about their appearance, how they look, you know, um, their self-esteem, something negative about their sexual expression, things like that. So the voice often, unfortunately, reflect gender norms and an oppression, which is interesting. So the environmental context, the cultural context plays a large role in all of this. And that's why some people can control it when you kind of provide information or educate them about why, why the voices are coming out in this kind of way. Society, cultural expectations contribute to the content of what you hear. I'm not good enough. Um, you're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. You don't belong here. Those kind of put downs. So interestingly, hallucinations are generally not positive. Are generally not. There's delusion, that you can be delusional about something, and it create a persona, or create these expression as if it's something positive, even though it's not. Like, you can say you're the president of the United States. It sounds positive, but you're not. Right? It's not a voice telling you you're distorting the reality or something. And so again, those words may come up: hallucination, delusion, false reality. Those type of words may come about when you start investigating or assessing or evaluating any data on this, hearing voices, right? So again, there's no clear scientific evidence, and the conclusions are more theoretical, meaning you can, just like I did, you can Google, or do an internet search of um, hallucinations, hearing voices, and you can find any data on this. And it's mostly theoretical. They're not as concrete to say this particular culture experiences it more than this. It's across the board. Any socioeconomic group who can experience it, and it is not really show up more in like a particular occupation, or so. It happens where, unfortunately, in a sense, we can say, one may not know. We may not know if at some point in our life we may end up with this type of experience, right? So this is one of the unfortunate thing. Um, how do you treat hearing voices? How do you treat auditory hallucinations? Um, there's no single way to treat it, right? If you go back to Tyra in her words, when she said, I wish I could find the way to distract myself, and just as a temporary motivation. Yes, you'd be shocked. One of the technique is actually distraction. Find something to distract yourself so that you don't hear the voice. I want you to I know I'm going to throw in something here that somebody say, why are you talking about this? And, with mental illness. If you ever have ringing in your ears, right? If they're ringing in your ears, some data said, some, research suggests it has to do with start at perimenopause and then become even worse during menopause. Some data says it has to do with old age. Some say it has to do with stress and, physical, whether emotional, psychological stress or physical stress, and so on. And one of the way that, and it cannot be cured. People tell you to do all sorts of things, but there's no clear cut way to treat, the ringing in the ears. It's similar here. When I said similar in terms of the one of the approach, they will suggest the data, the research suggests that the person should, turn on the music, turn on, music. If you're sleeping at night and the ringing in your ears get loud, you can sleep with music. You can put on like one of those noise, like a rain sound, or some kind of soothing music, horse racing, galloping, not horse racing with the noise per se, but just horse galloping that can be very soothing. It's the same thing here when you're trying to tell someone how to treat auditory hallucination, um, to use some form of distraction, whether it's listening to music all the time and exercising and so forth. So here's more of what can be done. So it can be managed through, of course, medication. But this is where in Jamaica we know even access to mental health care is limited. It's not accessible. I mean, you can even getting medical care is just difficult. And so mental health care, very difficult in order to get to psychotropic medications to help yourself. And so to do anything like that, of course, but say if all things were fair and equal and accessible, um, use of antipsychotic medication would be one recommendation, and this will help, it says, to reduce the chemistry and whatever is transmitting to the brain. So that voice that is transmitting, it will kind of reduce it, find ways to, it's going to work with it within the neurological system to reduce the auditory, the activities there. Now, a lot of this too would also be best explained by a neurobiologist, or even someone who, maybe their specialty niche area is neuro psychology, to work on in terms of, because all of that, some aspect of that has to do with understanding cognition and how the brain works, and biologically. Then there's holistic treatment. It's important to recognize that to take care of one's health includes the mind, body, spirit. Mind, body, spirit. So somebody may say, well, can the food that you eat contribute to you losing your mind? Yes, unfortunately, even more so in the last 15 years with the type of food that is being produced with the various chemicals. And even when you try to eat healthy, the exposure, the food that is being, you try to eat fish, but of course they use all sorts of things in the ocean, and you try to eat vegetable, of course they're sprayed with all sorts of chemicals that it affect you. So yes, all sorts of things can impact you. So not to scare anyone as if we're all going to start getting up at some point and hearing voices. No, but it's to say that in the environment where we're in and the culture, your socioeconomic class can also impact. It can happen across all areas, but based on the kind of food that you eat or you have access to, then the chances are, it increases your chances of all sorts of medical and mental health illnesses, right? You can exercise, yoga, meditation. Meditation drowns out a lot of things, a lot of negativity as well. Yeah, it's really training the mind and the body to correspond, right? So nothing intrusive comes in. But again, if it was that easy to control, then many of us would have control over it. It is not as easy as I said, so I don't want anybody to think that. Then, of course, sleeping, getting your sleep. Some of us, we think that 4 hours of sleep per night is okay. You get up 4 o'clock in the morning, you go to bed 12 o'clock at night, so you're gonna get it. No, that can affect you. So if all those things are in place, meaning eating healthy, sleeping well, exercising, having a very good, um, social interaction, but then this comes out, then it's a lot much more, it's a lot easier to diagnose what is happening. And again, remember some of the symptoms of auditory hallucination um, is captured within a mental health diagnosis. It's not simply by itself. So we could also do psychotherapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, reality therapy, and this is to reality therapy is not one of the easiest one for a lot of people to want to accept or to understand, which is when you do reality therapy, is to look at the behavior of the person and their actions and then test it against their choices or responsible of their choices. Now, why are we talking about reality therapy as it relates to auditory hallucination? Because what if the voices that the person said they're hearing is telling them that they're no good or they're not pretty? And when you find out that this person actually believed those things, or that they're not going to be successful, and then they actually believe that prior to them start having the onset of having starting to hear voices. So all of those things need to be assessed to get a better understanding of how they think and how their behaviors attach to their thoughts, to make sense sometimes of how you know these symptoms unfold. Right? Complicated stuff, but this is the reality of it. I'm at the very end, and but I want to include something else here. um I I'm very concerned about hearing about the number of suicide in Jamaica. If you do a Google search, you'll see how many. And now with the social media, where people can just put anything up, you see, it's the privacy is not there anymore. They're putting these things out there, not in terms of the person themselves, kind of saying it before they do it, but like it happened, and then people even show images of these things. So here's a question that if we let's look at, say, the culture of Jamaica instead, that because of that's where the situation with Tyra Spaulding occurred and unfold. And within the context of what she says, it sounds that there's isolation. It sounds as if there's, just a lack of support to her, or a lack of understanding, or this, minimization in some ways. When I say minimization, meaning maybe somebody here heard about it, and people hear voices all the time, as we say in the culture. So there should be more discussion on this, right? And we also have to look at other things that are at play. One of the things that she said that stood out to me, which I've heard so often, is when she said, when she talks about the evil in the world, right? I'm going to repeat what she said. So I have come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist here on earth in the way we think he exists. I think this world is way too evil, way too wicked. Honesty has no place here. Truth has no place here. Morals have no place here. I think this world is truly, truly evil, and evil only. That's what she said in one of the video that I saw, and the source is Social Issue Jamaica. That's where I saw it from. I'm sure it was posted somewhere originally, but that's where I saw it from. So I look at that, and she's talking about the evil in the world. And I've had conversations with so many of my Jamaican people, and the word wickedness and evil is something that we use in our culture, and we use it loosely. And we use it when we're hurt. We use it when we actually experience wickedness and evil to the severest level, right? And there was a situation that um, I came across where I think it has to do with the someone trying to um, obtain a passport, and it's not one of those ones that you always hear in the media. It's one that is not heard. And that interaction with this passport representative in Jamaica just have this person to the point of where they just cannot, they question the purpose of life. Seriously, where they come across people who lack empathy, lack kindness, lack compassion. And this person shared a story that they send in when they're trying to do this online thing, like submitting their pictures, like, 10 times to the passport office. But because this person have this personal vendetta against them, for whatever reason it is, they put in a barrier. Why am I talking about this? Because when you have people treating each other in this kind of way, there's bound to be repercussion negatively. There's bound to be stress and distress that heightens into mental illness. Because first of all, you can't believe what is happening to you. This harshness of society, the harsh reality that we're experiencing, the barriers. And here's what people always say: it's a system that is causing it. But there are people within the system, there are individuals operating in their individual capacity in these systems that is causing it. So it's not where there's a certain policy that says you should not help this person. No, individual within themselves is operating as an agent and decided to just make people's life miserable. So yeah, you're going to end up with mental illness in these kind of settings. Sadly, you're going to be angry. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be just, you yourself possibly develop a lack in empathy as well because so many bad things has happened to you. Family members crossed you. They lie, they steal, they cheat from you. It's just this ongoing thing. And is it just Jamaica? Of course not. It's across the globe. So her conclusion about the world is in such broad strokes to say the world is evil. It's a fair statement. It's a fair statement. It's a fair statement. It is an evil place. And oftentimes, say for example, you leave your native country, say for example the Caribbean, where um, it mostly one type of people in terms of ethnicity then. And say you move to the US and you come across people of different ethnicity or even now racial category. You want to say that what the person is doing to you is racism. You want to say what the person is doing to you is discrimination, but not realizing now the only reason why you're saying that could be it's because the person have a different skin color. Because you would have experienced the same kind of treatment in your native country. You would have experienced discrimination because you would have experienced prejudice. You would have experienced isolation. So we have to be careful sometimes when we're saying we're experiencing racism because of our race. Unless, of course, yes, we know there's legitimate cases. Of course, there's legitimate cases of racism. But we have to be careful. Why am I talking about this? Because we tend to conflate individual vices, individual evil behavior with systematic issues, not realizing that other people, individuals in these systems, can contribute to people's just instability and cause so much pain. Yes, we have accountability, we have our own human agency, we have to act on our own, but it is not easy to navigate. I know it's a long blurb. We're an hour and 10 minutes in, and hopefully, um, when I look back at this, it makes sense. Um, but you can let me know. Thank you.